They told me love was universal, but they never said it could end the universe. Under the shimmering sky dome of New Venice, I married a woman who wasn't from this world. Her name was Lya. Her beauty, alien. Her vows, ancient. And the way she looked at me? Like she saw every hidden part of me I didn't know existed. But what I didn't know that night was that I hadn't just married her. I had inherited a war. Her people don't believe in mercy. And when they find out she chose me over them, they will come. They will erase our wedding, our home, me. All to protect a secret they've buried among the stars. And yet, here we are. Two souls at the edge of Saturn's orbit. Watching Earth rise like a memory we're about to lose. She says they'll erase me. I tell her, then let's build something they can't destroy. And in that moment her hand touched mine. And the void between species, between worlds, disappeared. Beneath the crystalline dome of New Venice, the stars shimmered like distant memories etched into glass. The chapel floated high above the city, a marvel of light and sound, its marble platform hovering weightlessly in the upper atmosphere, wrapped in ribbons of artificial starlight. Guests from every corner of the galaxy stood in quiet awe. Drones moved like silent ghosts through the air, recording every moment with precision, while a floating orchestra played melodies that felt as though they were composed by the cosmos itself. Nothing about this night was ordinary. Jax Reeves stood at the altar, shoulders stiff beneath his tailored suit, fingers trembling just enough to betray the storm inside him. He wasn't born into this world of elegance and spectacle. He built things. Fixed what was broken. He never imagined he'd be standing here, waiting for her. And then, she arrived. Lya stepped into the light, and the entire chapel seemed to hold its breath. Her gown caught the starlight and fractured it into cascading rainbows, each ripple in the fabric moving as though it had a mind of its own. Her skin glowed faintly, not with makeup or tech, but something older, something not entirely human. And her eyes, those violet eyes, didn't just look at Jax. They reached into him. Every step she took sent a subtle pulse through the floor beneath his feet, as if the chapel itself acknowledged her presence. Guests parted without being asked. No one spoke. No one dared. She reached him, and time thinned. Lya didn't take his hand right away. Instead, she gazed at him with an expression that felt both ancient and fragile, like she was seeing him in multiple timelines at once and loving him in all of them. The officiant's voice faded to background as they began their vows. Jax spoke first, simple, human words of hope and devotion. But when it came time for her to respond, Lya stepped closer, her lips brushing against his ear. What she whispered was not in any known language. The sounds were soft, fluid, almost melodic. It wasn't just a vow. It was a binding echoing with a resonance he felt in his chest more than he understood in his mind. "It's from my heritage," she said gently, her voice carrying something untranslatable like starlight turned into sound. He repeated the words, unsure of their meaning, but certain of their weight. The moment he did, something shifted. The dome darkened to reveal the real stars above, glorious, endless. A beam of pale silver light framed them as they kissed, sealing the union not only before witnesses, but before something watching beyond the veil. For a moment, everything was perfect. But deep beneath the harmony of music and celebration, beneath the synchronized lights and flawless choreography, a hidden signal pulsed through the air, subtle, ancient, and meant only for her. Lya heard it, felt it, recognized it. And behind the mask of joy, her expression flickered. Just once. She didn't smile. After the ceremony, their honeymoon suite rests at the pinnacle of the chapel, a stargazing chamber reserved for the honored few. The music has faded. The lights have dimmed into a soft, ambient glow. Silence now drapes the room, as if the universe itself were holding its breath outside. Above, the crystalline dome reflects drifting nebulae, ribbons of lavender and silver gliding through space. In that otherworldly light, Jax sits on the edge of the bed, removing his jacket, still stunned by what just unfolded. Just a few feet away, Lya stands before the panoramic glass. Her hair flows like a dark river. She doesn't turn. She doesn't speak. She's listening to something far beyond the reach of human ears. Jax, gently. You're quiet. Lya, without turning. I'm listening. Jax. To what? She turns. Her eyes shimmer with softness and depth. A depth that feels like an entire galaxy waiting to be named. Lya, whispering. The past. And what's still to come. She walks toward him, silent as shadow. The glow from the stars reveals something unusual. As she slips the veil from her shoulder, markings begin to appear, not tattoos, not scars, but glowing symbols slowly moving beneath her skin, like they are whispering truths only she can understand. Jax, softly. You've never shown me this before? Lya, calmly. They've always been there. You just weren't ready to see them. She places her hand against his chest. Not cold. Not hot. Just a gentle pulse of energy, like starlight humming under his skin. And in that moment, he sees a flood of images crashing into his mind. A colossal gate. A burning world. A ship swallowed by the call of a distant star. Jax, breathless. What is that? Lya, soft as air. A memory. Or maybe a warning. She sits beside him, tracing invisible lines across his wrist like a ritual, ancient and sacred. And in her eyes, she's no longer just his bride. She's something else. A fugitive. A guardian. A riddle carved in starlight. Lya, whispering. There are things in this universe older than stars. Some sleep beneath the moons. Some wait behind mirrors. And one of them just married an Earth-born engineer. She smiles. Not mocking. Not entirely tender. It's the smile of someone who's lost more than she dares to say. Jax keeps holding her hand. Jax, steady. If you don't belong here, why stay? Lya, gazing into him. Because here, someone saw me. Not what I am, but who I am. They sit together in silence. Then something strange. A faint hum. Barely audible. Like a whisper bleeding through dimensions. Not wind. Not tech. A signal. Lya freezes. Her body tenses like a wire pulled too tight. Her ear twitches subtle, but Jax notices. He knows. She isn't just alien. She's in hiding. She says nothing more. Only whispers. Lya, VO. They've found me. A low hum like the breath of something ancient vibrates faintly through the sleek, metallic walls. Jax stops. He lifts his head. Something feels off. He can't see it, but his instincts flare like a silent alarm. Lya glides to the wall of glass. She says nothing. Her fingertips press gently against the transparent surface. And it ripples. As if space itself had warped beneath her touch. Her violet eyes narrow. Gone is the dreamy softness of the wedding night. What replaces it is clarity. Sharp, watchful. The look of someone who has survived, and remembers. Lya, quiet, almost a whisper. They are not here yet. But they've seen us. And once they've seen you, they never forget. She turns to Jax. And for the first time, he sees something that war zones rarely show. True fear. Not the panic of battle, but the kind born from knowledge, from memory, from things that words cannot carry. Jax. Who's they? What are you talking about? She doesn't answer right away. Instead, Lya opens a seamless panel in the wall. A hidden compartment, disguised behind smooth alloy. Inside rests a small glowing orb, pulsing softly like a living thing. Lya, softly. They are called the Vera. Minds without form. They don't speak. They only watch. And when they act, there's no language left to bargain with. Jax steps closer. The orb lights up his face, casting flickers of unease across his expression. Jax. Why would they be watching you? She places the orb in his hands. Lya. Because I broke a covenant. Because I ran. The orb vibrates warming in his palm. A rhythm pulses from within, but it's not his heartbeat. And it's not hers either. The lights flicker. Just once. But the feeling lingers. Like something unseen just swept through the room. No sound. No shape. Only presence. Jax. What did you bring here, Lya? Lya, staring at him. I didn't bring anything. They came on their own. Symbols begin to dance across the orb's surface. Glowing, shifting like they know they are being watched. Lya, urgent. Don't try to read them. They weren't meant for human minds. Jax. Why not? Lya, quietly. Because some truths bend a soul beyond return. She walks to a control panel and activates the emergency lockdown. The room dims. The windows begin sealing under a layer of shielding. But before the final seal closes, Jax catches a glimpse of something outside. A light, drifting down from the sky. Not a star. Not a drone. And definitely not human. Jax, murmuring. This wasn't on the wedding schedule. Lya, low. No. It's in the history of the hunted. The orb pulses harder in his grip. Its beat, syncing with his own. Lya turns, meeting his eyes. Lya, softly. If we're lucky, they're just scouting. If not, you'll understand why I never sleep near mirrors. From a hidden compartment, she draws a blade midnight black, thin as moonlight. Vibrating at a frequency too high to hear, only feel. Jax, deep breath. If they came for you, they'll have to go through me first. Lya, eyes like distant galaxies. No, Jax. If they come, you'll be the doorway. Outside, a warning light turns red. Something has landed. The suite is wrapped in an unnatural silence. Not peaceful, but watchful. As if the stars themselves are holding their breath. Outside the dome, nothing moves. Inside, the air feels heavier than it should. A red emergency hue paints every surface in muted tones, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat trying to stay calm. Jax stands near the reinforced window, his hand still closed around the orb. Its glow, once steady, now flickers with restless energy responding to something it senses, but cannot name. He stares out at the velvet darkness, eyes narrowed. This isn't fear. It's recognition. Behind him, Lya moves without a sound. The wall peels open in segments, revealing her armor if it can be called that. It's fluid, like living metal, and folds itself over her body as though it remembers her. Lya. They always start with a knock. They want to see if anyone still remembers the old rules. A sudden knock breaks the silence. Soft. Precise. Too deliberate to be human. Too organic to be machinery. Knock. A second time exactly 3 seconds apart. It isn't just noise. It's a ritual. Jax turns to the sealed entrance. The sound didn't echo. It didn't fade. Jax. You said they don't speak. Lya, without looking. They don't. But they knock to remind us. The door was never truly locked. He moves slowly toward the center of the room. The orb in his hand begins to vibrate more violently now, like it's reacting to something just beyond perception. A third knock. But not from the door. It comes from the wall. Inside the wall. Metal ripples, not visibly, but perceptibly. A crawling distortion, like something pressing in from another layer of reality. Jax. They are inside. Lya. Not yet. But they are trying to become the space itself. To merge with the boundaries. Once that happens, we won't know where the room ends, and they begin. She pulls a weapon from the wall. A lance folded in on itself, shimmering in and out of dimension. As if reality can barely contain it. Jax. This orb. It's showing me things. Flashes. Visions. Lya. I saw you drifting. Eyes open, but gone. Lya pauses, looking at him serious now. Her voice drops, soft but heavy. Lya. It doesn't show what will happen. Only what will, if you falter. The lights in the suite cut out. All at once. No flicker. Just black. Then. A presence. Not a voice. Not even a sound. But a pressure, inside the skull. A whisper made of static and rusted metal, too intimate to be external. Jax, tense, trembling. I think it just asked me something. Lya. Don't answer. Not aloud. Not in thought. It's not a question. It's a key. Respond, and it opens. A shape begins to form on the far wall. Not a figure, but a rupture. A disturbance in the very geometry of the room. It twists space like fabric under tension. Lya, urgently. Don't move. Don't blink. It's feeling out the boundaries. Your fear shifts them. Jax. What happens if I blink? The distortion curls. Not with a mouth. But by warping light into the illusion of a smile. Lya. Then it believes it was invited. Suddenly, the orb flashes. A burst of light, ancient and pure. Not just illumination, but remembrance. The shape recoils. Shrinks. Then vanishes. Silence falls again. But this time, it's colder. Jax turns to Lya. She's whispering softly words from a language no human speaks. The tone is mournful. Not for what happened, but for what's coming. Lya. They've marked you now. This place is no longer safe. She holds out her hand. It's trembling. And for the first time, Jax realizes. So is he. The corridor stretches ahead like the vein of something ancient, tight, metallic, and humming with a pulse that doesn't belong to machinery. This is no place for civilians. The walls glisten with condensation that defies the station's climate control. Every droplet feels intentional. The lights overhead flicker not from a malfunction, but as if they are reacting to a presence they can't process. Jax and Lya move quickly, silently. His arms cradle the orb now, as though shielding a heartbeat that isn't his. Lya leads the way, her eyes sharp, every step measured. The weapon in her hand no longer flickers, its glow steady, urgent. Jax, VO. I always thought fear was loud screams, alarms, chaos. But real fear, it's quiet. It slips in like cold air through a cracked window, subtle, but impossible to ignore. They stop at what appears to be a dead end. Smooth alloy. No panel. No code. Lya steps forward and places her palm against the wall. Nothing. She whispers something in a language that seems to shiver the air. Still nothing. Her jaw tightens. Then, with a calm precision, she pricks her finger. A drop of deep blue blood hits the wall and the metal shudders. Jax. Blood? That's your key? Lya, quietly. It's not my key. It's my inheritance. The wall ripples, melting inward like metal remembering how to breathe. Beyond it lies a narrow passage, organic in structure. Not built, grown. This is the cold vein. Jax, VO. It didn't feel like we were walking into a hallway. It felt like we were stepping into a secret the station had been trying to forget. The walls pulse with bioluminescent strands, like living nerves just beneath translucent skin. The air tastes different, charged, electric, like just before a storm. Further in, the walls begin to shift, scenes etched in their living surface. Not murals. Not carvings. Memories. Flickering with movement, alive in the glow. Beings of light kneeling before shadows. A city collapsing under alien stars. A woman Lya beside a human man. Time unwinding. Collapsing. Splitting. Jax sees himself. Not as he is now, but as possible versions. One of them reaches for Lya, her skin cracking like porcelain under pressure. Jax, softly. What is this? Lya. A memory that hasn't happened yet. Or has. It depends on what you choose. They reach a chamber, circular, breathing with energy that hums in his bones. At the center, a pedestal rises, covered in fractal glyphs. It seems to pulse in time with the orb in Jax's arms. Without touching it, the orb begins to rise. Pieces peel away, not breaking but opening. Inside is something alive. Not a creature. A presence. Ancient voice, VO. Two bound by stars and silence. One to witness. One to choose. Lya drops to one knee. Her face is pale. Her breath unsteady. Lya. It's begun. The choosing. The chamber trembles, time skipping like a damaged recording. Jax sees flickers of what could be, himself fighting, fleeing, dying. In one vision, Lya stands over his broken body, screaming in a voice not meant for this realm. Jax. Which one is real? Lya, barely audible. The one you step into. He looks down. The orb pulses, waiting. Everything else fade, memory, even her hangs in that silence. Time doesn't tick here. It breathes. Jax stands still, eyes fixed on the floating orbit's surface, no longer just a glow but pulsing, like the steady rhythm of something ancient, and alive. It hovers above its pedestal as if it remembers when the universe was young. He closes his eyes. And only then does he hear it. Jax, VO. I used to think the orb was a relic. Maybe a weapon. Maybe a key. But it was none of those things. It was a memory, and a warning. When he opens his eyes again, the chamber has transformed. The walls ripple with starlight and ghostly echoes, silhouettes of long-extinct civilizations replay in spectral fragments. And across from him, no longer kneeling, stands Lya. She's changed not in form, but in presence. Her gaze holds the weight of constellations. Her voice, when it breaks the silence, is soft and sorrowful. Lya. You can hear it now, can't you? Jax. It isn't speaking. It's remembering. Lya. That's what it does. That's what they did. Every time a species reached too far, this was left behind to remember the cost. She steps forward and places her hand upon the orb. Threads of shimmering light curl around her fingers, drawn to her like a child returning home. Lya whispers. My people didn't build this to save anyone. They built it to judge. The orb intensifies. The room dims. Everything else fades until only their faces remain, bathed in its glow. Then a voice. Neither male nor female. Not machine. Not creature. But presence. Raw and immutable. Orb, VO. Two futures lie ahead. One ends in fire. The other, in silence. The floor beneath Jax shifts not physically, but perceptually. Beneath his feet, two realities unfold like mirrored rivers. In one, he's holding Lya's hand as worlds burn behind them. In the other, he lets her go, and peace falls like snow across a galaxy in morning. Jax. You want me to choose? Orb, VO. You already have. You just haven't seen it yet. Jax turns to Lya. Her voice is barely audible. Lya. If you stay, you'll become part of this. Not just a man, but something they'll listen to for centuries. And I won't stop you. But I won't hold you either. She reaches for him but stops short. Her hand hovers near his chest, trembling. Lya. I love you, Jax. But even stars must choose whether to shine or fade. Silence stretches. Then Jax steps forward, not away, but toward her. Toward the orb. Toward the unknown. He takes her hand. Firm. Certain. Jax, VO. I didn't understand what this choice meant. But I knew this. The universe had given me something rare. And I would not let go of it. The orb expands in a breathless explosion of light, not destruction, but revelation. The chamber folds. Time unravels. And together, they vanish. Not into death, but into memory. Darkness, but not emptiness. A space older than light itself, quiet, heavy, alive. Jax and Lya float in the void, suspended in what feels like an endless, ink-black ocean. There is no up, no down. No wind, no sound. No time. Only them. Jax, VO. They say silence means the absence of sound. But this silence, it had weight. It pressed against your thoughts like it was listening, or waiting. Lya reaches down, brushing her fingers along the surface of the sea. It ripples not with water, but with a strange, silky substance, like memory, or the breath of a forgotten god. Where her touch lingers, glowing glyphs begin to bloom, shimmering symbols in liquid gold and midnight blue, pulsing softly like a dream remembering itself. Lya whispers. This is where the orb watches. Not a weapon. Not punishment. But memory of what we might become, if we remember who we are. A soft wave rolls outward, and from the surface rise visions, not reflections, but possibilities. Lya, alone on a cold throne, ruling over the ruins of her people. Jax, collapsed on a battlefield, cradling a child that never was. The two of them, building a world, only to see it fall from fear and doubt. Jax, barely a breath. These are futures. Lya. No. They are could-bes. Choices we never made. This sea shows you what becomes of us, when we forget the path we chose. A sound rises, not a voice, not a cry, but feeling. Like something ancient being born or mourning its own ending. Jax reaches out for her hand. But this time, she gently pulls away. Lya. I have to stay. One of us must carry the memory forward. Jax, softly breaking. No. Lya, no. We came here together. We leave together. Lya, smiling, eyes shimmering. If you leave, the story ends. But if I stay, it becomes legend. She places a hand over his heart where his pulse stutters, knowing what's to come. Her eyes, those haunting violet eyes, glow with a tenderness that transcends time. Lya. Tell them, we were real. That we chose to love against all odds. And that love is never weakness. She dissolves, not consumed, not destroyed, but accepted by the sea. As if it had been waiting to remember her all along. A soft flicker pierces the distant edge of the void. Something impossible. Warmth. Light. Jax, VO. She chose silence. So I couldn't speak. He turns, and walks toward the light. And behind him, the sea folds closed. As if no one had ever been there. A single star appears. A hush blankets the edge of space, where light and darkness quietly meet. The rings of Saturn shimmer like strands of silver thread, tracing an eternal arc through the void. Behind them, Earth slowly rises, gentle, fragile, yet impossibly proud. Jax and Lya sit close together at the edge of the observation deck. No words at first. Just silence, and the unspoken truths it holds. Lya's violet eyes gaze into the distance, gleaming with memories and warnings yet unspoken. Lya, softly. They will come for me. Not to bring me back. But to erase everything. Even you. Jax doesn't flinch. Doesn't look away. His stillness is not ignorance, it's resolve. Jax, quietly. Then we build something stronger. Before they get the chance. She turns to him. Not just to see but to see him. A moment lingers. Then slowly their hands touch. Human. And not human. Flesh. And something more. Life and the undefined in between. Where their fingers meet, a faint pulse glows, gentle, radiant, almost like a shared heartbeat. Not loud. Not bright. Just real. Lya, barely audible. And if we fail? Jax, with a quiet smile. Then we fail, but we won't be alone. Above them, a silent satellite drifts by, unblinking, unjudging. Below, Earth turns oblivious, breathtaking. And in that fragile stillness between worlds, something new is born. They came not in a dream, but in blazing light and chilling declarations. An ancient empire, carrying the history of Lya, and the fate of me. We didn't run. We didn't bow. We chose to love as a quiet yet defiant rebellion against a fate written in the stars. And in that moment between two species, between war and peace, we created something that didn't belong to any galaxy. A bond born from the heart. One day, they might return. Maybe, next time, they won't come alone. But today, at the edge of Saturn's orbit, love still lingers. Silent. Fierce. Unforgettable. And if you think the story ends here, you're wrong. Because in the final report from the orbital station, a strange signal was just detected. Not Earthborn. Not Varlian. But from a third species. And they are coming. Are you ready for what's next? Subscribe now to Alien Chronicles and turn on the notification bell, because the next chapter will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, about war, and about humanity.